All right. Well, I guess a lot of you are afraid to show your face. No one wants to see it.
Apparently.
It's
Yeah, I know.
it's too dark. You want
Yeah.
maybe when I get to a brighter area.
I'm driving, man, so no way I'm trying to do anything.
Hey, so I just want to get a few people together to talk action review on Winter Field Day. I just want to lay some ground rules so this doesn't get too lengthy. Dave, I'm going to surprise you. I need you to be my timekeeper, right? And when I say timekeeper, I mean when the I want to set a limit on no more than 5 minutes per topic. I'm going to drop the topics in the chat right now. These are just some of the things that we've already been talking about in the chat, but we're just going to like talk about it face to face. Just personal improvements. It does not have to be 5 minutes, but I just don't want to break that threshold. So
Yeah, no problem.
we will be clear and concise. So I'll first start off by kind of talking about like what was supposed to happen. So Flag and Torch Society had this real awesome approval to work as we are as a club, distributed across the nation. And we were templating between I don't know, probably 5 and 7 different regions being up, and maybe up to like 10 stations up and operating. We were going to do a live and synchronous logging situation. We're going to have people kind of control who's on and off. We were going to be using stroke call signs and all of that. Real in-depth order put out. About 40-some pages if you want to read it. I think it's a great baseline document that we can use for whatever next event we do. So I'm just going to throw this out, and because I'm going to be on a 5-minute limit as well. So 6:05 will transition. What actually happened? Who thinks they can contribute to what actually happened week of Winter Field Day?
I could say that, while we didn't have a large number of stations, the stations that we did have up were populating on ATAC. The communication could have been a little bit better there, kind of coordinating things. But the stations that were up were on ATAC, and, I was posting updates there as Trevor and I were freezing out for heat issues, getting back on the air, things like that. We kind of transitioned and could have planned a little bit better in terms of, who was going to hit what kind of multipliers and things like that. I think we kind of had an idea, but
All right, we got like 30 seconds.
Do you want to add in then?
Yeah, so I would say one of the biggest winter storms we're going to see for a long time hit the entire East Coast, which put a lot of people changing their plans. That's one massive one. I think we had about 4 stations have to drop out because of, Cody mentioned that, he had to leave because of the weather, and other people mentioned that they had to leave because of the weather or because of how they contribute to their family with their car. Stephen was affected. A lot of things were affected before even going into this. So that was a huge thing that kind of like took us back going into this in the first place, to where we actually only ended up with about 4 or 5 different call signs at the end of it that contributed to the logs. But it was hard. It was challenging. So I'm going to jump in, and we're just going to go topic by topic because we all kind of understand how this all works. Or field days. We've done field days. We've played radio, but for me, it felt like this was different. I don't know why, because it was a different story to tell. So let's just start with antennas. Like, I'll tell you guys that I feel like I picked the wrong antenna, because I picked an antenna that radiates well, but in 3 feet of snow, it was a torture to put up. So that's my piece. G5RV, especially bare wire G5RV was absolutely terrible to try and peel apart, to open up. It was hard to get erected, and it was just rough for me. So that's my take on antennas. I have some things I want to get out from there. Maybe focus on different frequencies, but I'll let someone else talk. Anyone have anything on antennas?
So one thing I will say is the antennas that we put up, while difficult to do in the weather, they did receive and transmit very well. I kind of had an alternating setup. I would use one to receive, the other to transmit, and it was working pretty effectively. But one thing I want to mention, future improvement that would be nice would be band pass filters to kind of eliminate some of the noise we were receiving. I'll pass it on.
Anyone else input?
Yeah, as far as antenna goes, I was able to operate for about an hour and a half on Saturday, and so I just use a 17-foot vertical whip, quarter wave vertical with a like 3 radials. Because of the snow, those 3 small radials were fantastic. So I had great propagation, and it's part of that whole like tripod setup antenna under 5 minutes, be on the air. So that actually came out of my truck kit that I keep in my truck all the time. So it worked. No directionality, but it worked. The problem was if I wanted to change bands, I was having to walk out in 3 feet of snowdrift to adjust it and then run back in to look at the analyzer. So that would be a downside for that system.
Which one did you use? Like a Wolf River coil type thing, or?
It was just literally it's like one of those trucker mounts that you can get at the truck stop with a that's just clamped onto a Goodwill tripod for $5 with a 17-foot stainless steel whip screwed
Okay.
onto it. Yeah. And that's it. And so basically I wasn't operating on 40 meters. I just did 20 and above.
Anyone else have
Oh,
good.
I just have one more quick thing. Have spare antennas for specialty things. Trevor and I struggled for with the Yagis that we had, and we could have planned to have a couple more spares or various ones to try to get that AMSAT stuff finely tuned. So having spares for specific, you have broadband antennas for different purposes. That's cool. But when it comes to, you have an antenna for a very specific purpose, like a Yagi, and tuned to a frequency band, it might be good to have spares in the future.
Yeah, I agree. Anyone else have anything significant?
Well, I tried the ATAS 120 and the Chameleon. It's an older Ecom 2, and it was hanging off of a Connex on one end with the Jeep string that I keep. It's a little spool of twine, not twine, but it's the orange twisted rope that's really small. It's like 200 feet of it on a little bitty spool.
Mm-hmm.
Threw that up in a tree with a water bottle and threw the wire for the Chameleon out. Got it about 30 feet up in a tree and worked like a champ.
Yeah, so I think one question, I'm gonna end this antenna portion is, Matt, you brought up a great point of pre-planning how you want to communicate for the antenna. I think my overall thing when we get to the end is, what are you planning for? What are your goals when it comes to setting up for field day for emergency preparedness? Is it 80-meter local contact? Is it quick setup? Is it, it really depends. So that's my thing on antennas. We will move on. We hit the 5-minute mark. Next is radio. What's your radio choice, and what's your AAR comment about radios?
The 891 worked great for me.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of the 891, and I did not use it. I did a real terrible job at planning my site while I was trying to plan for everything else. Um, but I'm currently building out right here what my field use is going to be, and I really need to get back to the 891. That being said, when Matt talked about the satellite contacts, did we plan for that? Did we program some stuff, or what we plan to use? What were we doing for 2 meter? Any other radio comments, so I don't go on and on.
So I know when I was doing the two antenna setup, using one for receive, one for transmit, and I didn't really have a antenna switch. So what I ended up doing was hooking my Yaesu 857 Delta up to the transmitter, and hooking, um, and actually using your ICOM, I think 7300 with the spectrum scope, which was really killer with the headset speaker combo. Shout out Dave. My hearing is shot, and having some help hearing call signs was awesome. So the 7300 was awesome with the spectrum scope to receive, and the 857 killed it on the transmit.
Hey, I will say a comment that I have specifically for Winter Field Day, and something I mentioned to a ham that's up here is, uh, I do not like touchscreen for the North Country at all. For me, it's all analog buttons. 891 is great for that. Everything's going to be an analog button. There's no touchscreen. But when you're looking at handhelds, your FT 3 deltas, your 5 deltas, any of those Yaesu ones, the ICOM 7300 or the 991. It's nice and pretty when it's working inside, but you take it out where it's cold, and you got to take your gloves off to do some touching. Me personally, I don't like having to do that. So
Comment on that.
say that again.
Just to follow up the comment on that, the screen, we actually had a problem with the screen on our rig stick. We had one of those rig stick analyzers, and it had, instead of the OLED style, it had the e-paper ink, and the screen actually froze and wouldn't update. So,
Really?
and it was only, I mean, yeah, we were at about 7 degrees, and it had been in a bag outside of 7 degrees for about an hour. So when we hooked it up to the antenna to try and tune the vertical in, the screen, you could see it like start to, it wouldn't release the pixels. It was just like continued to update till the whole screen went black. Once we got it inside, it was warmed up, then it started working again. So that particular device, not cold weather friendly. So
That's wild. I know I had one too. I didn't experience that, but it because I was close to, we prioritize warmth during setup, so I think I always had a good spot. I just brought it from outside into a warm area, but I didn't know that was a thing.
yes,
And
because we had it in a bag and it was outside
yeah.
for a while before we actually started setting up. So
Any other things on radios? No, I think the only last thing is with the multipliers, multiple bands. How many bands can you actually run? And I'm not saying you have to run all of them, but we even had some mesh-tastic devices. We had some handhelds. We had different things to hit different bands. I think we found out what G90 doesn't do 6 meter. Found that out. So we weren't able to, just when it comes to shuffling, we had to do stuff. But okay, we'll cut out radios and we'll move on to power. I will say that we kind of defaulted to shore power just because we had a building right there and we were late to getting set up. We had a generator on standby, but we talked about like what kind of issues you're going to get from just a regular portable generator and like the noise you'll get. And then we have batteries. I don't know, what's some of y'all's take?
I ran
Yeah.
on battery until I was down to about 11 volts, and my heat source packed up to go home and took his generator. So that's when I bailed. But my alternate battery, yeah, I toasted it. So
I think it would have been fine for us to use generator power when we were up there, but the fact that we didn't have any way to isolate the noise that was going to come from it, that was kind of, I think, the biggest factor of should we use it? Is it worth the multiplier when we were already having RF noise issues as it was? So in the future, if we do want to do that, we do want to try running on gen power, either have a generator that's newer than the 90s or have some big boy toroids to kind of kill out that noise it's producing.
And that's kind of circling back to very in beginning when I talked about, you know, antennas and having bandpass filters. I think having bandpass filters would help a lot with antennas and noise, but also the
One more.
additional noise that we would self inflict with you know, generators. But you know, I think we had a pretty good fuel system where we set up, you know, keeping it on power. I think, you know, if we were running on generator, I think we had a couple fuel cans ready to go and things like that. We would have been able to keep that going for a pretty good long while.
Yeah, for sure. I made sure that that gen was full and I had a 5 gallon, so we could have ran at least half of it without having to go and get more fuel.
Yeah, and I had a can in my truck, so.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure if planning for battery life for an extended period, especially in the winter, is feasible. I don't like how many batteries do you actually need? If we were to run a whole 72 hours at 100 watts, running the way you are, that's a I don't know, maybe that's a little extreme situation, but
Depends
you
on the
know
batteries you're using.
how
Yeah,
big
I
of a
mean that.
battery?
I thought I brought too much battery for what I was doing. So I have a 24 amp hour battery and a 100 amp hour battery. I brought the big one just to be safe. And when I went back to recharge it, I'd only had to charge it back up about 15 amp hours over the course of. Um, and the radio, even though I only operated for about an hour and a half, that for myself, that radio we've run it off that 100 amp hour over a 48-hour contest before. So, and the battery
I'd
weighs
say
20 pounds.
I was gonna say, yeah, as long as, I mean, the cold is a factor, but that's the same factor you're using for your radios. Um, Obviously, we had some heating issues, so we prioritized the equipment getting at least any heat. But as long as you're keeping a battery at the same temperature as you're comfortable with, it's probably going to last just as long as it would in a normal setup. If you're out in the fucking just embracing the cold, then you might have some issues with battery life. But aside from that.
Yeah,
well,
and so what I was thinking with the battery is like if you're actually planning for emergency preparedness, what's a good battery size that you can carry and you can operate for 24 hours? Kind of like in your immediate, like when you plan your kit, you know, like what is your primary weapon? What do you need to reach for right away? And when you have your
100 amp
bag,
hour.
you say 100
100
amp
amp hour
hour?
battery. 100 amp hour battery all day long. I ran my 100 amp hour battery. I ran my 706 Mark II-G at 100 watts the entire time. And I used the accessory ports for everything else I had running. And I only had to charge it up about a quarter way when I got back.
How big is a 100 amp hour battery?
can be small. My the one that's in the Jeep, the 100 amp hour mini Redodo lithium, fits in the back cubby of the Jeep.
They're typically about double the size of a standard car battery, aren't they? Roughly, not
No,
exactly. I think a little
they're
smaller than
about the same size as a car battery.
Are they?
Yeah,
Okay.
So yes,
mine is 12
hang
by 8 by 8.
we're gonna wrap this up because we're at the 5-minute mark. I think the primary thing is when you think emergency preparedness, are you carrying that 100 watt or 100 amp hour battery, or are you moving it in a car? Like, what's it doing? Because you can do a lot more in a car, in a box, or whatever. But what is your preparedness and what is your resource of a battery? All right, go on to the next one. Coax and feed lines. This is one thing. I had a bunch of RG213. with N-type connectors. We went with that. I would say the one thing I planned for was going from N-type to SO239 or PL259. So I had adapters for it, but switching back and forth with that, RG213 was a good cable, but I probably wouldn't want to carry that anywhere. That's definitely a box type thing, even just 2 80-foot runs. So thoughts on coax and feed lines? Go.
Ensure that they are good coax and feed line beforehand.
Yeah, that was one thing.
That was a thing we ran into with Rob's cable, was that one of his had some issues. We had to swap it out. So ensuring that your feed line is good beforehand and regularly checking up if you have like a go box of stuff.
And testing it, because the cable looked good, but we found a fault with the fancy analyzer 60 feet down the line. That was I think an 80-foot piece, and so I think for HF and things like that, if you're looking for portability, RG like 8X is pretty good. And most people can argue what connector will be best for low loss, but I think you can use whatever connector your equipment is set up for and be fine, because the second you start trying to use better connectors to, then now have to use adapters because it's the wrong connector. N-type is generally low loss compared to PL259 and stuff like that, but now you're using adapters and you're generating more loss. So use the connectors that your equipment has, and you'll be fine. You want to do HF portability, 8X is good, but LMR 400 is good. RJ213 is comparable to 400. As soon as you want to do VHF and those higher bands, you need LMR 400 or higher to prevent loss, because UHF and things like that will leak through that RG8X like crazy.
I used 35 feet RG58 and about 25 feet of RG8X.
Yeah, and I think that's pretty smart. I think the only downside to it is when you start getting more people at your site. I think we had a nice sweet spot. We had 2 stations, maybe even 3 stations up and running, where if we had short runs, we probably could have kept enough separation. But I've been to field days where there's like, I don't know, 6 to 8 stations up, and either everyone has to be spread out far away from each other, which kind of sucks and isn't conducive to like winter field day because y'all want to be warm. I think that's the only downside or potential downside that you see from it. Anything else on coax and feed lines? The other thing I would say is getting that ladder line up with the G5 RV was a pain in the butt. So probably won't do that again. We have an extra 30 seconds. So something I did not add in here is we didn't ground, and I can probably guarantee you that if we had grounded, we would have been in a little bit better place.
Yeah, I do
don't know
need to
if anyone-
experiment with grounding with the G90 because I get a lot of interference anyways. And so I do wonder that, and I ran RG316, which I don't know if the shielding on that kind of also ran into the issue with how much interference from the other radios I was getting or not, but it's a thing to think about, I guess.
Yeah, definitely a thing to think about. Okay, moving on. Computers and software. Again, I did not bring any of my field computers. I had one of my office computers, which worked. It was set up with the radio ready to go, but it didn't help me in my emergency preparedness sake. So now I'm currently getting my emergency computer set up for my kit, ready to go with all the software and everything needed. Additionally, N3FJP, thought it worked great for what we did, but I do think we can grow from it. I don't think I'm not sure if for emergency I would use N3FJP again. It felt like more of a contest log. I'm open to exploring. I think if there is another internet requirement that we do in the club, that we should probably contact something like World Radio League and see if they can create a custom log for us. Because then it's just hung in the cloud, or we create our own log that's a web-based log instead of
If
doing
we
that.
if we want to explore things that are more emergency preparedness logging, I would highly suggest that trying to instead of trying to reinvent the wheel here, in a real event, 9 times out of 10, actually 10 times out of 10, you're going to use an ICS form for logging information and things like that. So I think we could look into digitalizing ICS forms if they're not already. I'm sure they are, into something fillable that we could have on the PCs and there. But practicing logging more emergency based stuff on the ICS forms would be conducive to that role.
On that,
No, Matt, that's a great point.
On that note, there are digital forms out there for WinLink and FLDG. Now, I don't know about any other logging softwares that would have it, but those two digital software do have it.
Yeah, and I wonder if somehow.
Does this mean
Go ahead,
I'm going to
Steven.
have to take ICS classes?
Only if you want to be a RACES member.
Yeah.
Just the basics ones, 1, 2, 3, 7, and 8.
Yeah. FLDigi has all of the ICS forms built in the FL message.
Yeah.
So for like
that's
an
what I was gonna say,
emergency, true emergency thing, we should be using that stuff. For contest, any contest, like I used my iPad and hammers the whole time and was perfectly fine. I could export my my ADIF. I could export my Cabrillo log. For something like this, it's fine. But if we're going to talk about like actual MCOM purposes, we need to be using MCOM type software. Logging programs are not going to do it for us.
Which is an excellent feedback for Winter Field Day, because Winter Field Day specifically says they are not a contest, that they are an emergency preparedness exercise, in which we should probably we're gonna hit the time, but let's dig into that later on and come back around to that, because that's a fantastic point. Anything else on computers and software? Anything that you wish you would have done, didn't do?
Yeah, I need to
throw
get
in one
a
thing real quick.
dedicated system.
Ham clock's
Say
going
that again?
away.
Hey, this is
Ham
Mike.
clock
I'm
is
gonna
going
throw
away.
one
Oh
thing.
yeah.
Can you guys hear me?
Like
Repeat that. I
7,200
don't
in
think
here.
everybody heard that.
Yeah, okay, got it. Ham clock's going away. And then someone else had a comment. Let's start with Chris.
No, I was telling him to repeat that because ham clock's going away, and apparently it ends in June. So anybody who has a ham clock, it will not work after that.
Okay, we'll go on.
There's also
Did
a
you have a
open
comment?
hand clock. Yeah. Hey, can you guys hear me?
Okay.
I'm not sure if I'm getting through.
Yep, gotcha. Anyone else have anything on computers and software?
Yeah, I was just going to add, as far
I
as
need a
not to
dedicated
belabor
system.
the whole WinLink thing, but they do have the ICS forms, and what's nice about those is you don't actually send the whole form across. I think when you send it in the header, it says, okay, it's this form, but it just sends the raw data that goes in the blocks. So it saves on transmission throughput there.
Okay, we are going to go on to internet and networking. I would say with Starlink coming out, Matt and I had 2 Starlinks out at our site. I had mine that is most set up at work already, and then I didn't want to move it, so Matt's like, "Oh, I'll just bust mine out." Definitely made it super easy to get connected But even still, hotspots are like we're so connected these days. But it makes it harder for the people that aren't within range. I think this drives a lot about what you're trying to do and what you're trying to achieve. So I would say that whether it was hotspot or satellite or something local, I wish we would have tried extending it via amateur radio through like Arden or something like that to get that. But yeah, anything on that one, guys? Nothing heard?
I mean, I'll be the purist of the group. You know, if we're talking MCOM purely, can't rely on internet. So you can't rely on, hotspots and Starlink and anything else. It's got to be, you got to figure out a way to get this all through, through the radio,
Well,
through RF transmission. I mean,
I think
internal meshes we can do, like for example, like if you're in a mesh node and the guy in the next county over has a mesh node, you can connect, and all the power's out, but you guys have like backup power to support that kind of thing. That's great, But if we're talking like cross state, there's no way you and I would talk over mesh nodes.
yeah, and
So
so I'm going to slightly disagree with you and say that you need to, and this is I have it at the end, scenario building. Like you need to have a scenario that you're fighting off of, because here's the thing: if it were a nuclear attack, we're going to be losing HF propagation of the ionosphere for an extended period of time. So we wouldn't even have that. So truly, what is the scenario that we are fighting in it? And we'll get to that when I talk about it. But anyone else, internet and networking?
So one thing that I have in my kit that's pretty useful is I've got a router and a 24 port switch that are both 12 volt powered. So it's having a good power supply and things like that. I can absolutely create a local area network for the purposes of connecting computers locally in a EOC operations center, things like that. The medium at which we connect that local area network beyond, Starlink is awesome for that. Arden is awesome for that. The internet is just one big interconnected WAN or like LAN that branches out. It's all just little LANs that make up the WAN. And so, at your site, if you have the capability for 12 volt switching and 12 volt routing, things like that to make a LAN, the medium can be whatever is adjustable to the scenario, like Rob said.
Yeah, and I will say that with that, I did summer field day a few years ago with a group down in Cortland, and one issue they ran into was trying to do everything via Wi-Fi, but they were spread too far apart. So I actually created a N3FJP networking box that they would deploy that ran on battery, that they put out in the field. It runs on battery for the entire duration of field day. It's got a computer in it running their server, and it's got switches in it, and everyone can run Cat5 out to it and physically connect to it. So they can be upwards of, 300 feet each side, so 200 yards apart if they need to be, and still be connected where Wi-Fi was not doing the job that they needed for it. All right.
I have some real quick feedback on the networking side of it. It seemed like the networking was one of our largest missions that we were talking about. Like it was the heaviest lift for this entire thing, and that kind of melted down on us once people realized they weren't going to be able to go out and and operate because of other commitments, family emergency, things like that. It seems like next time, and this is just my hot wash opinion, we should have at least some little exercise we're doing inside where, hey, everyone connect to the server, send a message or do some sort of update to show that, hey, we all know how to connect, use tail scale, and can get into the server. That alone is a huge exercise for the group by itself, regardless of getting on HF.
Yeah. All right.
One last
Steven,
thing
go
I
ahead.
want to say is,
Hold
oh,
on. I don't know who's talking. Steven, go ahead. You had your hand raised. We're at time, but go ahead.
Well, sorry, I was trying to wait. So Matt mentioned ITAC. I was on ITAC or ATAC. I was on ITAC talking with Jake, but I don't remember seeing that many other people on there. Were there two different TAC servers that we were running?
No, there wasn't. We were logged on, but we weren't active. That's all I'll say.
Gotcha.
Okay. Moving on from internet and networking. Tents and environmental survival. We used a big army tent. I hated it. It took too long to put up. Wish I would have got one of those ice tents. I know Dave's in here and he had an entire tank that he main battle tank that he took out to use, and that he continues to use. So, thoughts on shelters? Go.
if
So
you're
I had
warm,
a
it works.
thermally insulated.
Go ahead,
Go ahead.
Chris.
Yeah. Oh, I thought he was going.
Chris, go.
I had a thermally insulated ice fishing tent. It was a 90 by 90. I had a 20-pound propane tank with a buddy heater, and with the temperatures outside, we barely kept it at about 50 degrees. The insides were frosted halfway up. So while it did work well, it didn't work that well.
Yeah, I mean, even if it wasn't the fact of the type of tent we used, the tent that we did have was littered. It is the worst issued tent I've ever seen. You could see more daylight than darkness when you were inside of it. But even that being said, whether it's due to that or not, we had a 32,000 BTU heater that I borrowed from work, and it barely kept up in the middle of the night. But we were also into the negative 24 or 25, something like that. So
yeah, we weren't that low, but our biggest thing with the inside of the tent was we needed to figure out a way to get everything up off the ground, and I think we would have been better. Like our feet were still touching the ground. You know, some of the equipment was still on the ground. I think if we had like platforms or something we could just portable platforms, even like plastic sleds, just to get the stuff and ourselves up off the ground, we'd probably been a lot warmer and a lot more comfortable in operations, and probably wouldn't have had to run the heat as high as we did all the time.
It's hard when it's
and
that
I guess
cold,
I'll throw it
man.
in here. I'll throw it in here. I don't know if it's completely pertinent to this topic, but I used fuel that I guess was questionable in source, and due to that, we froze the intake lines in the middle of the night at the coldest portion of the day, which was terrible. So, if you are going to use fuel, liquid fuel, make sure it's not contaminated or that it's fresh, ideally, because I think two of ours were bad enough that if we tried to use them, it gelled the lines and froze them. So
most shelters are good. It's going to be everyone's preference. But one thing, if we're thinking with the emergency communications mindset, the conditions in a specific location can change drastically, pretty quickly. So these tents and shelters and things like that are awesome. Things that you can pack up and move quickly are even better. Working out of a trailer may be even the best situation if possible, because in that sense, when you're working in a trailer, you can almost set it up to be ready as soon as you pull up somewhere, kind of unhook some chairs, whatever, get things going, throw up your antennas and be on the air. And then if conditions change, you can, pack it all up quickly and move. And then set up just as quickly in the next place. So, thinking with the emergency mindset is just
the shelter is good, but it's even better if it's something that you can pick up and move in a timely manner for conditions changing.
All right, so we'll continue on. We hit our time limit. Operating instructions are your SOPs. What did it can either be the club's SOP or operating instructions that were put out, or your internal ones for how you coordinated your local site. I will say that I spent a lot of time on the club one that I did not even. It was an afterthought to think about our local site. That I knew that everything existed where I worked. So that's where we did our field day, was by where I worked. So I could just grab things and go. I didn't think I was ready. I didn't have my SOPs down. I didn't know how we were setting up or what to do. I had to call audibles the day of to say, hey, let's prioritize this. But I think that lack of synchronization really hurt us for the little time that we had to set up. Go ahead.
I'm gonna agree on that because as I was coming down as a guest, yes, I am a member of the club, but I was still coming down as a guest operator. But I should have been a little more proactive, and we all should again been synchronized with the coordination of everything. So I could have helped out more, and I should have taken a moment to even at least glance over that op order that you had out.
Yeah, that was my nice way of saying that to you, Dave. I actually did this whole AAR to call you out.
Oh, thanks. I appreciate it.
I'm kidding. Anyone else? I think Dave, you got something?
I think you said it good in the chat they were having before this, like a couple of days ago. The op orders that you guys were running up there aren't necessarily the same op orders everybody else is going to be running, depending on where they're at, or they may have to be tweaked a little bit depending on location.
How so?
Stickleman was trying to say something. Yeah, I would say that I don't think there was much in that op order that would have been restricted to location besides because we did talk about weather differences between the two, but it was pretty generic. But it's more of like maybe it's just what are your SOPs for even setting up internally. What do you focus on first? Do you focus on shelter first? Do you focus on antenna first? Is that going to drive what you do? I don't know.
Yeah, that's all weather dependent. Our first priority when we got there was shelter and heat, because we knew it was already below zero when we showed up in the morning. It was probably like 10 below, with the wind chill, probably like 20 below when we started. So our priority was shelter and heat, and then we would go out, set more equipment up, grab more from the truck, bring it into the shelter, get warm back up, and then go back and forth throughout the morning. If you're doing an emergency event like, in the spring, shelter and heat may not be your priority, and maybe getting your equipment up and running to get communications going.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. I would say next time is to not be comfortable with doing the same thing every year in the same spot, but focus on what your SOPs look like and practicing with it. So I should have taken out what I do POTA with, and I should have been comfortable setting up. And I think that was the big issue is I didn't. I used everything different. Okay. So we'll go into the last topic, and this is the one that I think is the overarching issue with execution of any field day, and it's scenario building. It's what are you actually preparing for? What emergency are you actually dealing with here? Now, I made one for the club, and maybe that made it harder. But if we would have read the club order and how we were acting, is we were not necessarily in the affected area. We were supporting those that were affected as a regional EOC. So that supported the club priorities. But it probably would have made me prioritize antennas differently. If I'm a region 2 call and I'm focusing on region 2 communications, I probably should have had focus on 80 meter, 160 meter to get my short bubbles, and then maybe if I were further out, you would want that 80, 60 meter if you're working out in Texas, but then you got to report back to the main national EOC, which was up here in New York. So I got to do 80, 160, but then I also need to prioritize 15 meters or something like that. I think that would have driven antenna selection, maybe modes of operation. It would have told me what we have and what we don't have. And this is Chris, something you brought up is like, what's the scenario I'm fighting off of? Is it we had a giant hailstorm or ice storm, which makes me think that's what it is for northern New York, the ice storm of 98. If that's the case, okay, let's fight around that. So I could still have satellite internet, but I don't have hardwire internet. I could not have shore power, but I could have battery and generator power. But even generator power, I'm going to run out of gas at some point. So, like, that's how we got to put our constraints, limitations and constraints down based on that scenario. So I thought this is the biggest thing when going into an exercise, especially emergency communications based exercises. You have to build and fight a scenario, because if not, there could be someone who's just preparing for the lights to be off and someone preparing for nuclear war, and they're going to fight over things if we're not wrapping our head around the same scenario. Okay, that's what I got. Go ahead. Sweet, nothing. I like it.
Are you suggesting that be a continue being a club scenario building exercise, or something bigger winter field day wise?
I think well, I think everyone in Winter Field Day should come up with a scenario that they're going for. Because the people in Florida may not have snow, but they could say, "Hey, I'm using this to exercise a hurricane, or hurricane relief. I'm using this to exercise something different." But if they're doing hurricane relief, then they're going to have different constraints. They probably don't have gas. They might have solar after the storm's done. I don't know. There's just so many variables that come with it. But I think for us, I think each region needs to come up with the scenario that they are fighting, and then maybe at the national level we figure out how we make it work.
Because that
I have a comment.
also causes confusion with the logging, where the logging software N3FJP or whatever, it's built out to show you all the bands that you're hitting, all the regions that you're hitting. So if it feels in that situation more like a contest rather than the objectives of um, a scenario where you have to reach all of the if you're the regional EOC hitting the local EOCs, or copy these bulletins locally, things like that.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
I do think that is good.
I was gonna say, if you don't have any kind of, like you said, like we put our own scenario in. If we don't have a scenario, it is just a contest, because then there's no other point you're getting out of it if you're not having any kind of scenario, any type of limitations. If you're just one hotel in your house, you're just contesting. So yeah, I think it's very important that we do that, and that especially even going forward, like the summer field day, of running just on battery and gen power, and then prioritizing when, because you could just run the generator the whole time and then you're just wasting power. But if you're running battery, and then just running the generator to recharge the batteries, turning it back off, then you're being as conservative as you can, as efficient with the fuel that you have.
I'll say this to end it. Like, if we have the relationship with Winter Field Day next year, like we did this year, and we have this whole year to plan for that next year, I think we will have our own measures of performance and effectiveness that we establish within our club to say we have to make communications with every U.S. state. We need to do it on every single band, or we need to operate on these bands. Like, yeah, we have the Winter Field Day ones, but we need our own objectives that we stick to. That is it. It's not, and that's if you want to operate as a club, and that's because you're giving yourself to the club. We got to, you'd have to take a step back from maybe not take a step back entirely, but it can't be about selfish desires. It has to be about we're achieving this as a club to be better because we're being challenged, not just I want to be comfortable and go out and run radio. But I don't know. Any other thoughts on this so we can wrap this up? Okay, awesome. Hey, so for anyone who has additional comments, we have all of these threads currently in the Field Day AAR on our Discord at flagandtorchsociety.com or discord.flagandtorchsociety.com. We'll get you there. But we have all these different subcategories that we talked about, and we're still continuing to talk about, and I think we'll grow for the next AAR or for the next event. I think we'll probably put Summer Field Day on our list. I know I'm definitely looking forward to that, and I'm gonna do that this year. So, pending any questions or thoughts, I'm gonna go ahead and wrap this up.